For centuries, empires rose and fell, their grandeur etched in stone and legend. From the sun-baked deserts of Egypt to the sprawling cities of Rome, the grand narratives of history often focus on mighty battles and charismatic leaders. We remember the clashing of swords, the strategic brilliance of generals like Genghis Khan. You see him fierce, bearded, Mongol rider on horseback with fur and armor. Or the political machinations of emperors. But what if the true architects of collapse were far more subtle, more pervasive? What if the fall of kingdoms wasn't always sealed on the battlefield or in palace intrigue? Imagine vast granaries, once overflowing with bounty, slowly emptying into dust. Fields that once pulsed with vibrant life, turning barren, cracked earth under an unyielding sun. Picture citizens, their faces etched with deep hunger, their strength waning as essential harvests fail year after year. Disease follows, a grim companion. This isn't a tale of sudden conquest by external foes or grand revolutions. It's the silent, insidious decay from within, driven by the most fundamental human need, food. How much did widespread famine truly shape the course of civilization? How often did a lack of grain shatter empires more effectively than any invading army? Let us explore the unseen architects of collapse, the relentless forces of hunger and environmental strife that brought even the greatest empires to their knees and remade the world. For ages, humanity lived as nomadic hunters, ever at nature's whim. Then, 10 millennia ago, a revolution began. In river valleys, particularly the Fertile Crescent, humans learned to farm. This wasn't just planting seeds, it was the dawn of civilization itself. Agriculture sparked immense prosperity. Stable food meant populations surged. Small villages grew into towns, and eventually, great cities emerged. Complex societies developed with specialized labor, intricate structures, and monumental architecture. These were golden ages, fueled by abundant harvests from fertile soil. Yet, this prosperity was fragile. Early civilizations were utterly dependent on consistent weather. A slight climate shift could spell disaster. Prolonged droughts withered crops. Relentless floods drowned fields. Locust swarms devoured entire harvests. Each stressor pushed societies to the brink. Food scarcity, once rare, became a devastating reality. Granaries emptied, leading to widespread famine and unrest. People abandoned homes seeking sustenance. What followed were often periods of profound collapse. Cities deserted, trade abandoned, empires fragmented. The Fertile Crescent, once an innovation cradle, saw cycles of boom and devastating bust. This ancient struggle against an unforgiving environment taught hard lessons about resilience and existence's delicate balance. Ancient Rome. a colossal empire. Yet beneath its grandeur lay a critical vulnerability: its stomach. As the city swelled, feeding its population became an unparalleled challenge. Grain, the blood life of its people, flowed from Egypt and North Africa, a vital stream across the Mediterranean. This dependency was a double-edged sword. Animated maps show vast shipping lanes, a lifeline easily severed. Piracy preyed on vessels. Adverse weather devastated harvests, sank cargo. Political turmoil in crucial breadbaskets posed an existential threat. When supply lines faltered, consequences were immediate. Markets fell silent, shelves empty. Food prices skyrocketed, making sustenance unaffordable. Widespread hunger ignited social unrest. Riots erupted, citizens demanding bread, not circuses. This instability weakened the empire's core. Elites scrambled to quell unrest, diverting resources. The military policed internal discontent, neglecting borders. Economic collapse, social upheaval, political infighting eroded Rome's foundations. Ultimately, Rome's majestic infrastructure, its legions, its laws, could not overcome the fragility of an empire built on fluctuating, distant staple food. This dependency wasn't the sole cause of downfall, but a relentless wound that bled the empire dry. A stark reminder: even the mightiest civilizations are tethered to basic needs. Medieval Europe, a land of rising cathedrals and growing towns, was unknowingly walking into a demographic trap. For centuries, populations had steadily climbed, nourished by improved agricultural techniques like the heavy plow and three-field rotation. But these innovations, while boosting yields, had finite limits. By the early 14th century, Europe's populace was pushing the boundaries of what its land could sustain. Farms were smaller, marginal lands cultivated, and food reserves precarious. Then the climate shifted. The period known as the Little Ice Age began to bite, bringing colder, wetter summers and harsher winters. Harvests failed repeatedly. The Great Famine, spanning from 1315 to 1317, gripped the continent, decimating millions. Bodies littered streets, and desperate acts became common. This era of scarcity left survivors weakened, immune systems compromised, making them perfect targets for the next catastrophe. The Black Death arrived in 1347, a terrifying plague carried by fleas on rats, spreading rapidly along trade routes. Within a few short years, it annihilated an estimated 1/3 to 1/2 of Europe's populace. Cities became death traps. Entire villages were abandoned. This catastrophic loss of life following the famines profoundly reshaped society. Labor became scarce and valuable, challenging the feudal system. The combined pressures of famine, plague, and overpopulation created immense social and political instability. Peasant revolts erupted, fueled by desperation and a new awareness of their worth. Kingdoms, already strained, found themselves embroiled in prolonged conflicts like the 100 Years' War, often exacerbating the crisis. Europe was caught in a Malthusian trap, a cycle where population growth outstrips resources, leading to collapse. Yet from this crucible of suffering, a new, more resilient Europe would eventually emerge. From the 14th to the 19th century, a dramatic climatic shift descended upon Earth, the Little Ice Age. This wasn't just a local chill, it was a global phenomenon, causing average temperatures to plummet across continents. Imagine a world where once fertile lands became barren and reliable harvests vanished. In Europe, the effects were catastrophic. Prolonged cold and relentless rains devastated crops, leading to widespread famine. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 decimated populations, weakening societies for centuries. Rivers like the Thames frequently froze solid, a stark visual of the profound chill. But Europe was not alone. In Asia, China's Ming Dynasty faced similar ecological challenges. Frigid winters and droughts triggered widespread crop failures, sparking peasant rebellions and undermining central authority. The mandate of heaven itself seemed to tremble. In North America, indigenous communities adapted to harsher conditions. Norse settlements in Greenland were abandoned as sea ice expanded, cutting off vital routes. This chilling period reshaped human history, not through conquest, but through environmental forces. It spurred innovation, migration, and political changes as states struggled to feed their people. The Little Ice Age reminds us how deeply intertwined human destiny is with the planet's delicate climate, a powerful echo from our past. Colonial powers, driven by insatiable demand for resources, reshaped global economies. This era wasn't just about territorial conquest, it was also about control over sustenance itself. European empires, particularly in the 18th and 19th centuries, imposed new agricultural systems on colonized lands. Indigenous farming practices, often diverse and sustainable, were replaced. Cash crops like cotton, indigo, and opium became mandatory. These were not for local consumption, but for export to distant markets. The best lands, once used for staple foods, were diverted. This created a dangerous dependency. If a harvest failed, or if trade routes were disrupted, local populations had no reserves. Food security vanished. the consequences were devastating. Famines, once localized, now spiraled into catastrophic national crises. Millions perished. In India, under British rule, a series of devastating famines occurred. The Great Bengal Famine of 1770, for instance, wiped out an estimated 10 million people. Later, in the 19th century, during multiple droughts, vast quantities of grain were still exported from India. The Viceroy, Lytton, prominent mustache, formal uniform, despite widespread starvation, maintained these exports, believing in market forces. This cruel irony highlights how colonial policies weaponized hunger. Food wasn't just scarce, it was deliberately removed, leaving populations vulnerable to engineered scarcity. This dark chapter reminds us how economic exploitation can become a tool of immense human suffering. History recounts battles, but beneath a somber truth, immense human cost. When crops failed or political strife disrupted food, famine resulted. These events reshaped societies, altering demographics profoundly. Consider the Great Famine, 1315 to 1317, gripping northern Europe. Relentless rains destroyed harvests, causing rampant starvation. Visualizing this data, population lines plummet, especially among the vulnerable. Mortality rates soared, not just from hunger, but diseases preying on weakened bodies. This set the stage for later crises, like the Black Death. Then, famines in China. The Great North China Famine, 1876 to 1879, severe drought devastating provinces like Shanxi. Demographic charts show regions shrinking by millions. Each point, a life lost, a family broken, a community shattered. Data helps grasp suffering scale, often exceeding war casualties. Even recently, famine loomed. The Bengal famine of 1943, exacerbated by wartime policies, showed how human decisions turn scarcity into catastrophe. An animated timeline highlights escalating deaths. A map shows affected regions. These visualizations aren't just numbers, they're memorials to the forgotten. Stark reminders of human vulnerability and food security's critical importance. Understanding patterns helps prevent such tragedies. History often recounts the grandeur of empires, their mighty armies and vast territories. Yet a silent, relentless enemy frequently gnawed at their foundations: famine. This wasn't merely a natural disaster. It was a devastating feedback loop, deeply linked to imperial decline. When crops failed, food scarcity became rampant. Soldiers, often the first to suffer poor rations, grew weak, morale plummeting. A hungry army is a reluctant army, ill-equipped to defend borders or suppress internal revolts. This military weakening left empires vulnerable. Starvation also fueled profound political instability. Desperate populations rioted, demanding food. Leaders perceived as unable to protect lost legitimacy. Succession crises escalated. Provincial governors, seeing central authority wane, often declared independence. Economies shattered under widespread hunger. Trade routes became perilous as bandits prey on merchants. Production ceased, markets emptied, and tax revenues vanished. The financial bedrock crumbled, making recovery nearly impossible. This cycle of military decay, political turmoil, and economic ruin culminated in fragmentation. Once mighty empires, stretched thin, splintered into smaller, warring states. External invaders seized opportunity, or internal rebellions overthrew weakened regimes. Famine didn't just cause suffering, it systematically dismantled power structures, turning grand civilizations into footnotes of history. Beyond the battlefield, beyond grand declarations, lies a silent, relentless force that shaped destiny: famine. This overlooked catalyst fundamentally shifts our understanding of empire's rise and fall. It forces us to confront harsh reality. Nature's wrath devastates like any army. For centuries, historians focused on kings and conquerors, on battles won and treaties signed. But what if the dying harvest, empty granaries, held more sway than a general's strategy? What if crop failures weakened states from within, making them ripe for collapse long before the final blow? Consider the fall of civilizations: Rome, the Maya, the Khmer. Narratives cite instability, economic decline, or invasions, while undeniable, prolonged food scarcity often paved the way. A starved population weakens, ripe for disease, prone to rebellion. Understanding this, we gain a new lens to view history. It's not just who fought whom, but who ate and who starved. This perspective doesn't diminish human agency. It enriches, adding a layer of environmental and ecological depth to the human story. As we reflect on grandeur and downfall of past eras, let us remember the silent killer, the invisible hand that often guided events. Famine's history is not just a tale of suffering, it's a profound reminder of our intrinsic connection to the land and its bounty, a lesson we still learn today.